randomness. It forces these comparisons you'd never make, a 60s compilation against a 2019 solo record.
Sure, why not? Or a Southern rock vinyl against a live jazz cabaret album.
Exactly. And our mission today is to do a deep dive into the results for one of these groups, round one, group 221, and figure out why some albums made it and others, well, they went home early.
And Group 221 was a fascinating mix. It really put the album quest concept to the test. First up, you had Liam Gallagher's 2019 solo album, Why Me, Why Not?
An album that the blogger himself and a lot of people probably wrote off before even hearing it.
For sure. Then contender number 2, a piece of pure history, the California Sound of the 60s, a compilation album on vinyl.
That's tough competition, full of classics.
Totally. Third in the group, we've got Blackfoot's 1980 album, Tomcattin, another vinyl, pure, dirty Southern rock.
And the last one is the real wild card, right? Blondie's personal collection.
A very odd duck. It's a live album, but it's been reworked into this kind of jazz cabaret set. It's a huge departure from their, new wave sound.
Wow. Okay, so real mixed bag, and the source material says the result was a genuine shock.
It really was. The final ranking has Liam Gallagher, the modern contender, not just advancing, but taking the #1 spot.
Over the classic 60s compilation.
Over the compilation, the California Sound came in second, so Blackfoot and Blondie were out in third and fourth.
A modern commercial album defeats a curated collection of classics. Okay, I'm hooked. Let's unpack this journey through Group 221 and figure out what happened. We have to start with that winner.
We do, and you can't really talk about this album without first talking about the huge shadow of the Gallagher brothers' rivalry.
Right. It created this bias for, decades of music fans.
Absolutely. And the blogger, Greensterox, he's very open about this. He admits he went into this listen with a huge industry-wide assumption.
That Noel was the genius.
Exactly. That Noel wrote all the big ones, Supersonic, Wonderwall, and that Liam was, just the voice. He even says he thought Liam would just retire into obscurity after Oasis broke up.
That's a pretty strong bias to have going in.
It is. And that's what makes his final verdict so powerful. He literally writes, "Looks like I'm eating my words now." This album didn't just meet his expectations, it totally shattered his view of Liam.
It's the whole point of the album quest right there, isn't it? Forcing you to confront stuff you'd normally just dismiss.
It is the perfect example. It makes you engage with the art, not the narrative you have in your head.
So what was the turning point? He said he completely missed Liam's first solo album, As You Were.
He did. He heard the buzz at the time was basically, it's just Liam singing Oasis B-sides, and that was enough for him to just, ignore it.
So what changed his mind for album number 2?
One song on the radio. Just one. He heard Shockwave.
Shockwave.
Yep. He thought it was, and I'm quoting here, pretty cool. And just based on the strength of that one track, he decided he had to buy the album for his collection.
That's so old school. One radio single being enough to convince a skeptic. It feels like that doesn't happen much anymore in the streaming age.
Right. But it worked. And that one track led to this huge critical reassessment of Liam's whole solo career.
So let's get into that rivalry aspect, because this is where it gets really interesting. The blogger doesn't just say the album is good. He makes a direct comparison to Noel.
He does. He says its quality and freshness easily rivals Noel's latest solo effort, Who Built the Moon.
Wow. Okay, that's a huge statement. For years, the story has been set in stone. Noel writes, Liam sings.
Exactly. So for Liam to come out with something that, in this reviewer's opinion, stands shoulder to shoulder with what Noel is doing, it completely disrupts that whole dynamic.
It suggests that maybe the magic of Oasis wasn't just Noel's songwriting.
It suggests the magic was the combination. That Liam's voice, his delivery, wasn't just decoration on the cake. It was a core ingredient. It was the engine. And that engine apparently is still running strong.
And the review points out that the album's strength is very front-loaded.
Very much so. He mentions a good track late on, The River, but he says the real killer material is all in that opening half.
What are the standouts?
Now That I've Found You, once Shockwave, the song that got him hooked, and a track called One of Us.
That's a classic strategy, isn't it? Hit them hard and fast with your best stuff, especially in a format like this where the first listen is everything.
Absolutely. You don't have time to build slowly. You need to grab the listener immediately. A front-loaded album has a massive strategic advantage in the album quest.
Okay, so let's talk about that track, One of Us. The review says it was his absolute favorite.
It was. He praised its real flair for melody and said it was authentically delivered. But he didn't just like the tune, he dug into the lyrics.
And he found a direct message to Noel.
Oh, yeah. It's basically a public conversation with his brother set to music. The blogger pulls out two key lines that show this. The first one is, "When you come to mind, disappear 1,000 times."
Which, to most people, might just sound like a generic lyric about a relationship.
Right. But if you know the Oasis story, that is a direct surgical strike. It's a reference to Noel's famous habit of just disappearing mid-tour, vanishing. It was a huge source of tension in the band.
So it's a piece of band history hidden in the lyrics. That's clever.
And the second line he pulls out is even more interesting because, "Act like you don't remember. You said we'd live forever."
Wow. He's quoting one of Noel's most famous songs back at him.
Exactly. He's weaponizing Noel's own legacy. But it's also, kind of heartbreaking. It's him acknowledging the history they shared, the greatness they achieved together, and what was lost. It's surprisingly deep.
It adds this whole other layer to the song. But the blogger is clear that it wasn't just the songwriting that won him over, it was Liam's performance.
This is the absolute key insight. He says, and this is a great line, that songwriting and production are dramatically enhanced by a superior performer.
He argues that Liam brings an impact and power that just elevates everything. He doesn't need Noel-level genius to work with. He just needs something decent, and his voice will do the rest.
Precisely. And this raises a really interesting question for the whole album quest idea. How do you weigh raw songwriting against the power of a performance?
That's a great question. Because Liam's voice, it's just iconic. That snarl, that swagger, it makes you feel like you're listening to something important.
It turns a good song into an essential feeling song. And that power, concentrated in that front half of the album, is what ultimately pushed it over the line to first place.
Which is incredible, because the album in second place, the Californian Sound of the 60s, is just, it's packed with solid gold.
Yeah, that compilation was always going to be the one to beat. It's literally designed to be a collection of unbeatable classics.
Let's run through some of them. You've got Scott McKenzie's San Francisco.
A definitive hippie anthem has to be on there.
Then the Byrds' Mr. Tambourine Man.
A genre-defining track. Plus Sonny and Cher's I Gotcha Babe, just pure pop perfection.
You can't argue with that. And the Turtles' Happy Together. It's impossible to be unhappy when that song is on.
And then you have the songs that are literally about California, the Mamas and Papas with California Dreaming.
Of course. And the Beach Boys. The review mentions two of their tracks.
California Girls and Surfin' USA. I mean, come on. The sheer density of iconic material on this record is just, it's almost unfair. It's an album built to win on history alone.
But it didn't win. And the reason why comes down to the format. It was a vinyl copy.
Exactly. And this is where the review gets really technical and interesting. The blogger notes that the album was actually pressed in the 80s, not the 60s.
So you'd expect the quality to be pretty good, right?
You would. You'd expect better mastering, better vinyl. But he notes there were clear signs of wear and tear.
Where specifically? Which tracks suffered?
He says the Mamas and Papas track took the brunt of some quality degradation.
What does that mean in practical terms? Clicks, pops, surface noise?
Yeah, all of the above. It could be scratches, or it could be something called inner groove distortion, which happens near the center of the record. If that track was last on the side, it's more likely to suffer from that.
And it wasn't the only one.
No. He also mentioned that Everlasting Love by the Love Affair, which he calls a great Motown-esque track, also had significant quality issues.
It's interesting that specific tracks, maybe the previous owner just really loved those two songs and played them to death.
It's very possible. But whatever the reason, when you're in a direct shootout with a pristine, modern digital album like Liam Gallagher's, every single crackle and pop is a point against you.
So the physical medium itself let it down. But some tracks survived, right?
Oh, yeah. He said some tracks sounded positively gorgeous despite the wear.
Which ones?
The two Beach Boys tracks, which isn't surprising given Brian Wilson's production. Also Young Girl by Gary Puckett and the Union Gap.
Okay.
And maybe most impressively, Jefferson Airplane's White Rabbit.
Now that is impressive. White Rabbit is so dynamic, with all those quiet moments and then the huge crescendo. For that to still sound good on a worn record says a lot about the quality of the original recording.
It really does. So at the end of the day, despite the flaws, the sheer number of absolute classic songs was enough to secure it a strong second place. It was just too powerful for the other two contenders.
Which brings us to the albums that didn't make it, the ones eliminated from the quest. Let's start with Blackfoot and Tomcattin.
Blackfoot is, well, the blogger calls their music an acquired taste.
I can see that. It's that really raw, dirty Southern rock. The review says it's all about booze, gambling, women, and rock and roll living.
Yeah, it's not subtle stuff. But what's really fascinating, and something I had forgotten, is the historical context the review brings up.
What's that?
There's surprising connection to the early 80s metal scene in the UK, the new wave of British heavy metal.
Wait, what? Blackfoot, the southern rock band from Florida. How did they get mixed up with Iron Maiden Saxon?
It's a weird quirk of history, right? But it was all about the sound. Blackfoot had these heavy, chunky riffs, and Ricky Medlock's really gruff vocals. It sonically fit with what those early metal bands were doing, even if the lyrics were about whiskey instead of wizards.
That's amazing. So the sound was heavy enough. What was the album's fatal flaw in this group then?
It lacked a killer track, a standout anthem. The review points out that other Blackfoot albums had huge hits like Highway Song or Diary of a Working Man. Tomcattin just doesn't have that one song that grabs you by the throat.
And in the album quest, you need that immediate impact.
You absolutely do. He mentions a couple of fun rockers, On the Run and Reckless Abandoner, but they're not showstoppers. He does credit Ricky Medlock's guitar playing, though. He says it helps the album get under your skin with repeated listens.
But that's the problem. The album quest doesn't really allow for repeated listens. It's a single high-stakes showdown.
Exactly. It's a format that punishes growers and rewards immediacy.
Now, the blogger had heard this album before, right? On CD.
He had. And the CD version actually did quite well in a previous group. It came in second. So he did a direct comparison between the vinyl and the CD.
And what was the verdict? Did the vinyl sound better?
It did. He said the vinyl sounded more meaty, especially in the bass.
More meaty? Why would that be?
It's probably down to the mastering. An 80s vinyl pressing was often mastered with a warmer, fuller, low end. The CD, which was likely a 90s reissue, might have been a victim of the early loudness wars, where everything was compressed and you'd lose some of that dynamic, rich bass.
So the vinyl was technically the better listening experience.
Arguably, yes. But a slightly better bass sound just wasn't enough to compete with the sheer quality of the top two albums in this particular group. It's a classic case of being in the wrong place at the wrong time.
The luck of the draw. Okay, let's move on to our final contender, the one that came in fourth. The Blondie album, Personal Collection.
This one is just an anomaly, a total mystery box.
It's a live album, but reworked into a jazz cabaret. And the source is a promo disc from a newspaper, the Daily Mail.
Yep. So right away, you know this isn't a core canonical release. It's a curiosity at best. And the confusion doesn't stop there. The blogger was completely baffled by the collaborators, a group called the Jazz Passengers.
He couldn't figure out who they were?
Not really. He wasn't sure if they were a separate band or if Blondie members were in it or what. And he says even a quick Google search didn't really clear it up for him.
That's not a good sign. If you have to stop listening to do research, the immersion is gone.
And it gets worse with the track labeling. Some songs are just credited to Blondie, others are Jazz Passengers' feat, Deborah Harry, but it all sounds like it's from the same show. It just feels messy, rushed.
But even with all that confusion, Deborah Harry's voice still managed to shine through on some tracks.
It did. The blogger singles out her sumptuous vocals on a few songs. Dreams Lost on Me, Union City Blue, and I'm Always Touched by Your Presence.
Union City Blue is a great track. I could see that one working in a more atmospheric, jazzy style.
For sure. Some songs probably adapted better than others, but when the arrangements failed, they failed spectacularly.
Where did it really fall apart?
It fell apart when the songs were radically altered from the source. This is always a huge risk. The review highlights two tracks in particular. The first is When the Fog Lifts, which he says just dissolves into lethargy.
Lethargy, so just slow and boring, no energy.
Pretty much. Probably just lost all its rhythmic drive. But the biggest crime, according to the review, was what they did to Tide is High.
Oh no, what did they do to Tide is High?
They turned it into a rather insipid calypso version.
Insipid calypso, you can't do that. The whole point of that song is the cool, driving reggae rhythm.
Exactly. He says they basically stripped out everything that made the original a classic. It was a complete betrayal of the source material.
That's a deal breaker right there.
It is. He does mention that the album ends on a decent note with a track called End to End, which had a dignified, chunky riff, but it was too little, too late. The whole package was just too inconsistent and confusing to compete. A clear fourth-place finish.
Okay, so let's put it all together. Let's synthesize this. Yeah. The final ranking. Liam Gallagher first, the California Sounds second.
And that contrast is what makes the album quest so insightful. You have the raw, modern energy of a comeback album going head-to-head with the established historical perfection of a greatest hits compilation.
And the modern album won.
Mhm.
To me, that says that a powerful performance and a consistent front-loaded track list can actually beat pure nostalgia, especially if that nostalgia is on a scratchy old record.
I think that's a huge takeaway. And the other big one is the power of the format to force a reevaluation of your own biases. The blogger went in ready to dismiss Liam Gallagher. The quest made him listen, and he came out a convert.
It totally validates the whole randomized setup. So if we had to boil it down, what are the key lessons a listener can take away from how this group played out?
I think there are three big ones. First, performer impact. Liam Gallagher proved that a legendary voice can elevate solid songs into something truly special. The performance was the deciding factor. Second would be track density versus consistency. The California Sound got second place purely because it was packed with iconic hits, but its inconsistent quality, the vinylware, cost it the top spot against Liam's pristine, consistent album.
And the third lesson comes from the losers.
It does. The danger of deviation and the lack of a standout. Blackfoot failed because it didn't have that one killer song to make an immediate impression. And Blondie failed because the radical changes to classic songs just didn't work. If you're going to mess with a masterpiece, you better improve it.
It's a brutal lesson. In the album quest, you have to either be consistently great and authentic, like Liam, or historically undeniable, like the compilation, to have a shot.
Anything less, confusion, inconsistency, a lack of impact, and you're going home.
So to wrap up the fate of Group 221, Liam Gallagher's Why Me, Why Not, and the Essential compilation, The California Sound of the 60s, both advanced to round 2.
They lived to fight another day, leaving Blackfoot's Southern rock and Blondie's jazz experiment behind.
And that leaves us with a final provocative thought for you to mull over. The source material made it clear. Liam Gallagher won because his superior vocal performance elevated the material. So if the whole point of an album quest is to find the absolute best, does the sheer, unquantifiable power of a legendary voice matter more than anything else? Can a world-class performance make up for songwriting that isn't quite at a history-defining peak? When you strip it all away, is the voice the ultimate weapon in the war for the best album of all time?
Something to think about the next time you put on a record.
We'll catch you next time for another deep dive into the sources.